What's up, Backflow Broskis? It's your boy, the Backflow Bro. Today we're going to go over the USC 10th edition 5-valve 3-hose RP procedure. You might have been checking out our channel. We do have a 2-valve version. If you're looking at the Kruger Instruments, if you're shopping for a test kit, or you have a backflow school and you're trying to sell test kits, which a lot of them do, definitely check us out. It's Kruger Instruments. We have a 2-valve version of everything, compliant with the USC. But if you're doing a 5-valve, it's actually like super complicated to put 5 valves, so we don't bother with it. We do have a 3-valve version if you check our website. If you're doing 3-valve, if you want to do 5-valve, you kind of gotta do either the Arbiter. We have other videos using the Arbiter digital gauge. Those guys are pretty chill. Definitely deal with Arbiter. Midwest, I don't really deal with that much, but they're pretty cool, I guess. They're kind of the industry standard, honestly. In most backflow schools where you're doing the test procedures, you're going to use the Midwest. We used to do a lot of different procedures using the 2-valve, and then everybody's commenting like, why don't you do it with the 5-valve? We have it with the Arbiter. We also have it with the Midwest now, as of this video, which is today. So we're doing the USC 10th edition. It's definitely approved more towards the West Coast. University of Southern California is USC. California, you definitely got to use the USC procedures. You go further west, I feel like once you get to like Arizona and Nevada, they kind of would accept either the ASSE or the USC. But USC is definitely very reputable, definitely good procedures. We have the 5-valve, so it's a 3-hose test no matter what you're doing. They do single hose tests for everything but the RP. Doing the RP, it has to be a 3-hose version. We have the Midwest. We'll just get started on the test procedures. I know what you're thinking. First step, start opening test cocks. First step is actually notify, identify, inspect, observe. Generally, your proctor, if you're in the field, I guess you just want to do those 4 things. If you're doing a backflow school, like a test, a lot of times people watching the videos are actually like studying for an exam. Studying for the exam, they usually just want you to list those 4 things. They start going like, well, who are you? What are you observing? Who are you notifying? You want to know that information. It's on the, it's in the book. I guess if you haven't read the book, USC 10th edition, I would recommend reading the book. There's a lot of different information that might not be on the exact test procedures. But anyway, we're just going to go through the physical testing of it. So after you notify, identify, inspect, observe, you flush the test cocks, you open 4, you leave it running. You leave all these running. Open 3, open 2, open 1, close 1, close 2, close 3, close 4. The reason you want to do all that is because you don't want to jump the relief valve. Some of the other test procedures, like ASSE notably, they're not as worried about it jumping, or they're not as worried about it when they're writing the test procedures. USC's very worried about it. Make sure you don't jump the relief valve. Sometimes the relief valves can get stuck, and if you jump them and then test it, it works. You didn't jump it and then you test it, maybe it didn't work, but you jumped it, so it does now. So you don't want to jump the relief valve. Next step is install appropriate fittings. These already have the appropriate fittings. I understand that, right? Like they have a 1/4-inch flare adapter. If you're doing a test in the field, a lot of times they don't. Like a lot of times they'll be 1/2-inch raw end, or they actually go 1/4, 1/2, or 3/4, depending on the size of the valve. So you might have to use adapters and things. For the test, you might just want to do like, I'm installing my adapters. They might be looking for that, especially if you're doing an AWWA or ABPA exam. They do a lot of times fail you for miscellaneous crap that's not super important, but is important for the field. Just want to kind of go like, I'm installing my fittings. Then you just go ahead and in the test, attach high hose to 2, low hose to 3. For USC, they want you to run water through the gauge. So you open low first, open, low bleed. For our test, we kind of just took off. A lot of times when you buy the kits, they'll have like little hoses attached. You should probably loop them so that they're level. We just removed them. Essentially, if you have it where you're trying to put it in a bucket or something, it might make sense. For us, we just took them off for the video. But you probably, if you got it from the factory or you're in a testing school that hasn't removed them, you might want to put them, they're on and they're like a little hose, little clear hose that loops around and loops both of them together. So you leave that running, it's running through. Now you open your high. Now you open your high bleed. They should be running a little nicely. Now you shut your outlet shutoff number 2. You want to make sure they're running while you shut your shutoff. I've seen people fail the ABPA exam, honestly, because they had them running, then they closed them, then they shut it. If you're in like Florida or Georgia, they actually tell you to shut these before you shut them. So if you're doing the USC 10th edition, you want to make sure everything's proper, everything's doing the right thing. So you shut the shutoff before you shut your bleed. Now you shut your high bleed first. You have to shut your high bleed first because the gauges are descending scale accuracy. You're doing a digital gauge like the Arbiter in our other videos. They actually are accurate ascending too, but no matter what you're doing, you have to follow the USC procedure. So you leave that low bleed running, close your high bleed. The book kind of says to open your low bleed all the way, get it all the way up to the high end of this gauge scale, which is usually 15 or whatever it is. 7.8 is the reading I'm getting. That's what they call the apparent. You don't record that anywhere because the apparent is not the actual. The reason being, maybe this shutoff leaks. So USC, they have very elaborate procedures because if shutoff leaks, then maybe you do something else, so you got extra procedures. For ASSE, they don't as much. They're kind of like, if the shutoff leaks, you should probably fix the shutoff. So they'll test the shutoff, but they don't actually have extra procedures in case the shutoff leaks. So for this one, this is the apparent. You can't take that reading. It's going to be probably the same reading, especially if you're taking an exam. But if not, like it might be leaking through. Now you're going to do the relief valve opening point. For the 2-valve kits, it actually tells you to attach this before. Being that it's a 5-valve kit, you haven't attached it to anything. So it's full of air. So there's a hose, there's water in it, but it's full of air at this point. So you open your high control, open your bypass. No. Before you do that, I have the sheet here. I'm reading off the sheet. So make sure you're doing it exactly the way they want it also. Open your high control. So this is full of air. Don't worry about it. Open your high control. Open your low control a bit. Some people say a quarter turn. I would open it like much less than a quarter turn, like just a tiny bit. And then at some point the relief valve opens. So the relief valve is open. I got 5.1. Has to be at least 2. Each little dash is 0.2, and each big dash is the numbers. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So 5.2, I would say, is the relief valve opening point. Now you close low control. Now you do what they call bleed connects B-core or something. So you open your bypass. So your high is open, you only close the low. Open your bypass that bleeds the valve, or bleeds the hose. Close bypass. You attach your bypass to test cock 4. Open test cock 4. Since your bypass is closed, it doesn't actually affect your test. Like it pressurizes the hose, but your bypass is still closed. Open number 4 test cock, which you already did. Open and close low bleed. That resets your gauge. If you notice, before I reset it, it was probably reading about what the relief valve opening was. So you have to reset it to make sure you get the tightness of check valve 2 test. Now you open your bypass control. That's going to put full line pressure behind to check valve 2. So if check valve 2 leaks, you'll see your pressure go down. If it doesn't leak, then it doesn't matter. That means your check valve 2 is tight, meaning you did a back pressure test on check valve 2. Some jurisdictions might require a differential pressure on check valve 2 as well. For USC 10th edition, they don't require that. There's additional steps if you're doing that. So you'll have like auxiliary steps on that. For us, we don't care about that. If gauge is steady, it might drop a little bit. That's because of disc compression. So when you put that line pressure in on check 2, it might actually push the check valve a little bit. You might see a little different of a reading. If that's the case, it actually doesn't matter. We're just talking about if the gauge is dropping all the way. So if it drops just a little bit, don't worry about it. Now we do the last test, tightness of check valve 1. Being that all of this is hooked up, you have your bypass hose, you have your shutoff 2, bypass is open, high bleed is open. If there's a shutoff 2 leak, it's gonna leak through the gauge. So don't worry about that. If there's a shutoff 2 leak, it leaks through the gauge. So we actually don't really care about the shutoff now. A lot of the other procedures, they'll actually have you test the shutoff for tightness. And then if it's not tight, I think ASSE actually recommends that you fix the shutoff if it fails the test. For USC, they're not that worried about it. They're saying if the shutoff 2 fails, it's going to leak through the gauge because we have everything open. So we just consider that the case. So therefore, check valve 1 is definitely in a static condition, meaning if it's leaking through, it's going to leak through the gauge. So shutoff 1 must be tight, meaning if you got the reading here, and that should be the exact reading. So then you open and close low bleed to reset the gauge. 8.6 is what I'm reading. That means 8.6 is the reading you get for check valve 1. That's the differential pressure. It has to be a minimum of 5. So actually for USC, that means you're done the test procedures. You finish, you pack up. If you have to do the auxiliary steps where you move these over, you have to do a tightness of shutoff 2 test first. That's more East Coast, like more towards like Florida and Georgia, they require that. Or also Northeast or whatever. But Northeast, they usually do the 1 hose procedures for their RP. So if you're out West Coast and you don't see a check valve differential for your check valve 2 on your test report, don't worry about that. That means you're doing the USC basic procedures. So you're actually done. You have the check valve 1, you got your relief valve point, you got your check valve 2 against back pressure, you're good to go. So you close all your test cocks, remove all equipment. And now you're good to go. So fill out your test report. Again, feel free to like and subscribe. If you have a comment, question about the test procedures or the test kits themselves, definitely hit me up. It's Kruger Instruments. We also have the 2-valve test kit. If you haven't checked out that video, we do the 2-valve procedures for the RP. A lot of people like those better. It's a little simpler, less valves. There's only 2 valves on the 2-valve test kit. Check us out, Kruger Instruments. We also do gauge calibrations if you have to do a gauge calibration. And then for USC, they say to open shutoff 2. For ASSE, they actually say like to restore to the pre-test conditions. So if it was shut when you got there, you leave it shut. For USC, they say always open it. I feel like if it was shut when you got there, you might want to leave it shut because you might like flood the next floor or whatever is going on with it. But otherwise, they just say to do that. If you're practicing for a test, you should probably check out our other videos. We have a lot of different extended commentary, prepare for the AWWA exam, ABPA exam, stuff like that. Definitely like and subscribe, and thank you for tuning in. Again, this is the Backflow Bro.